Crisis now, and officials report record numbers of people trying to enter the United States through South Florida. Customs and Border Protection tweeting this week, earlier today, 24 Cuban migrants were taken into U.S. Border Patrol custody after making landfall in Key West, Florida on a rustic vessel. Since October 1st, agents have responded to 216 migrant landings in Florida with more than 3,000 encounters. Meantime, tragedy at the Texas border. More than 50 migrants swept away trying to cross the rain-swollen Rio Grande after at least 9 of them drowned. More than 3 dozen were rescued. Joining me now is Florida Congressman Carlos Gimenez. Congressman, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Want to get to some of the dangers here. You've seen the drownings that are on the Rio Grande and then the perilous journey that we've been hearing about for decades, Cuban migrants coming to Florida. I mean, this isn't a journey that's gotten any safer.
No, it doesn't. And so we get a number of calls in my office every single week asking about loved ones that are making the crossing. Either have they landed or have they been apprehended. Sometimes they have landed, sometimes they've been apprehended, but a lot of times also we hear nothing about them. And so we can only guess. Maybe they made it to the Bahamas, maybe they went back to Cuba, but many of them never make it across. And so we have, hundreds and thousands of people that have died trying to make that journey, not only from Cuba, but from Haiti also. And I blame the Biden administration for incentivizing them to try to make that journey, just like they're incentivizing millions and millions of migrants to cross the border down in Texas and California and New Mexico.
So much of the focus has been on Northern Triangle, countries in Central America, people walking up through Mexico, going to Arizona, to Texas. You haven't heard much about Florida, at least recently. What's driving this latest surge in Florida? And again, this is something that Florida has been a destination for so many people, especially from Cuba, really for decades now.
Well, listen, what the new dynamic is that there are a lot of Cubans now are coming through the southern border. A lot of Haitians are coming through the southern border. We actually have more Cubans coming through the southern border last year than we had during the Mariel boat lift. And so what's happening, it's an enterprise where people are paying up to $20,000 to go to Nicaragua. So they pay the Cuban government money, they pay the Nicaraguan government money, and then they pay the coyotes and finally the cartels to get through the border. So over 140,000, probably that number is about 150,000 Cubans have actually come through the southern border this last year, more than Mariel. We only had about 130 come through that way. So yeah, that in conjunction now with increasing numbers trying to make it, the old-fashioned way, which is through the water on those rickety boats that you've seen, is what's happening now. And they're also paying smugglers, et cetera, to bring them across and bring them to South Florida. A lot of them will end up in South Florida because the new Biden policy is once you make it here, you're good. And so they know that unlike the Obama policy, which took care of or eliminated wet foot, dry foot, and we only had 50 encounters 2 years ago, by the way, now when you make it to Florida, you're good to go.
Another dynamic here on the Mexican border is that Mexican cartels are now reportedly making fentanyl themselves instead of bringing it over from China and smuggling it through. Think of these major operations ongoing to manufacture this stuff in Mexico. This is from Customs and Border Protection seizing 640 pounds of fentanyl in June. In July, 2,100 pounds. That's up massively in just 1 month. Does federal law enforcement have the capacity, do you think, to deal with this massive amounts of fentanyl manufacturing and then smuggling into the United States?
No, they don't, because what they're spending most of their time processing millions of illegal immigrants crossing the southern border. So we just don't have the resources, and the cartels know this. And so the cartels, look, they used to make about $500 million a year on human trafficking before Biden. Now they're making $13 billion a year on the human trafficking. So now I guess they figured out how to create and manufacture fentanyl. So they ship the migrants through, and then all the Customs and Border Protection agents go to one area. Then they're shipping, more of this fentanyl through other areas and getting by. And by the way, that's more than enough to kill everybody in the United States, many times over. And so we've had a war that's being waged on the United States, a silent war by the Mexican drug cartels with this fentanyl that's killing, over 100,000 Americans every year. And you know what? Biden administration does absolutely nothing to curtail it.
Congressman Carlos Gimenez, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Molly?